guys, Silver here, and there was a point in time where the most hated Sonic game of all time was Sonic Forces, even being more hated than Sonic 06 and Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. Despite this game just getting average reviews from critics, the fans despise this game, mainly for the fact that this game had lots of wasted potential and was seen as a disappointment after waiting for a new Sonic game since Sonic Lost World, followed by the disastrous Sonic Boom experiment. Nowadays though, Sonic Forces, although still being heavily criticized, it seems like more and more people are less harsh on this game. Well, I'm here to look back on Sonic Forces and let you know if I really think this is the worst Sonic game. When it comes to the story of Sonic Forces, you may find this surprising, but I honestly think this game's story is pretty decent. Now, yes, the story was disappointing considering before this game came out, I was expecting a grand epic plot that was on the same level of Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic 06, and Sonic Unleashed, and it didn't come close to being as good as those stories. However, if you just look at the story for what it is rather than what you wish it could have been, Sonic Forces honestly has a pretty good story. I think it's really commendable that they tried giving us a plot where Sonic's friends are actually relevant again, as they form a resistance against the Eggman Empire. And we even get some scenes of the resistance trying to be heroes on their own instead of just relying on Sonic all the time. We have Knuckles being the leader of the resistance, the Chaotix and Team Dark do something for the first time in a long time, and even Silver gets a good amount of screen time. And aside from that one random Optimus line that makes no sense, Silver is great in this game as he tries to take up this role as a hero figure alongside Espio after Sonic is thought to be dead, and he even gets to fight with Infinite in a really cool scene where he's able to hold his own enough to chip off a piece of Infinite's Phantom Ruby, which is later used by the Avatar to save everyone from Infinite's virtual reality sun. Speaking of the Avatar, it's cool how he's introduced as a rookie in the Resistance, and over time he ends up proving himself and saves the day. Also, Infinite is honestly an underrated villain. He has an awesome design, cool virtual reality powers, and I like that in reality he's just some emo loser who lost to Shadow and ends up becoming this try-hard villain. I personally think that was a good way to set him apart in order to not make him just another Methalist, as well as the fact that his character kinda reminds me of Kylo Ren from Star Wars, as both of them are pretty much wannabe pretenders that have been given power. It honestly is a shame that Infinite hasn't appeared in a console game since then. He really should have gotten a boss fight in Shadow Generations. But overall, I'd say Sonic Forces has a good story. I like it more than the stories in Colors, Generations, obviously Lost World, and hot take, I even like it more than Sonic Frontiers' story, because at least the presentation in Forces cutscenes have much more going on, and characters like Amy and Knuckles are portrayed better in Forces. Tails is still awful though. The main problems with the story, however, is that there aren't too many cutscenes, as a lot of the important story details are shown through these text boxes, and on top of that, Forces has a pretty rushed and anticlimactic endgame with a poorly animated final battle scene, and those things do significantly bring down the story. I'd say my favorite scenes in the game though are the fight between Silver, Sonic, and Infinite, Shadow rescuing Sonic from the Phantom Ruby clone, the post-credit scene where Sonic and the Avatar say their goodbyes, and the scene where the Avatar saves everyone from the sun. Shadow beating up Infinite was pretty funny too.
I'm not weak. I am not weak.
Moving on to the gameplay, however, unfortunately this is what ruins the game for me and for most people. Simply put, Sonic Forces gameplay is average at best and pretty boring at worst. Starting with the controls, they suck. I don't know how they messed it up so badly, but the movement and jumping in modern Sonic feels awful. He does run at a decent speed, but the actual feel of his movement is so stiff, even in comparison to other boost games, and jumping is so unresponsive even with Sonic's double jump. Sonic's air boost is pretty cool though, and I'm glad it returned in Shadow Generations. But aside from that, this is the worst modern Sonic has ever controlled aside from Cyberspace and Sonic Frontiers. I'll take the controls in Sonic Heroes, Shadow the Hedgehog, and Sonic 06 any day. The Avatar controls are just as bad unfortunately, however I will say that they're my favorite character to play as in this game, because at least the Avatar has a unique gameplay style as opposed to just playing as a worse version of modern Sonic. Aside from it just being awesome that you can finally create your own Sonic character in a game, the Avatar also has a heavier emphasis on combat with really cool Whispin guns. My favorites are the Burst Whispin and the Hover Whispin because it plays similar to Silver's moveset. Despite the Whispins being fun, however, I really wish the combat had more to it. I think it would have gone a long way to include bigger enemy variants that take more than one hit, similar to Heroes and Shadows combat. Last and definitely least, we have Classic Sonic, and not only is he terrible to play as in this game, but he barely has any relevance to the story. The team up between him and modern Tails could have been cool, but it just leads to Tails constantly glazing him, and for a brief moment Omega's with them, but he's shut down the whole time until the last minute of the story. I just think that team up could have been fun. But going back to Classic Sonic, I genuinely hate his inclusion in this game, and frankly, I don't think I really need to further elaborate why his controls and physics are so bad. They're just such a far cry from the classic Sonic games, Generations, and Mania. Fans really don't know how good they have those superstars now. Probably the worst part about Classic Sonic though is that him being in this game is a big reason as to why this game failed. What I mean by this is that all that development time spent on implementing an awful Classic Sonic could have been spent on fleshing out modern Sonic and the Avatar, giving them better level design, more boss fights, and giving us more cutscenes focusing on them. Not all levels in this game are bad though. There are a couple of decent ones, like Modern Sonic's Egg Gate and Mortar Canyon, the Avatar Spaceport and Capital City, and Null Space is probably the best stage in the game, and it's the only one I'd consider to be more than decent. It's legitimately really good. With a cool intro of Sonic and the Avatar escaping the dimension, and then we get a fully 3D level in Metropolis with Fist Bump playing. It's just so cool. When it comes to the visuals of this game, they're pretty good. I really like the sunset, the fire aesthetic of the city, the futuristic Metropolis, and the frozen junkyard they turned the chemical plant into. Green Hill Zone, however, is a significant downgrade visually from Green Hill and Generations, which sucks considering how cool the concept art for Green Hill being turned into an Eggman prison looked. Going back to the stages, the main problem with them, including the good ones, is that the stages are just way too short. And unlike the short levels in Sonic Colors, which are fun despite their length, when it comes to Forces, these levels just end before they feel like they just started, or before they actually started getting good. Most of these levels just consist of running in a straight line with very little platforming, and the platforming that does occur is even simpler than Colors' platforming. As for the boss fights in this game, they're pretty disappointing, as half of the villains they announced for this game don't get any boss fights. I was especially upset that Chaos Zero didn't get a boss fight, because his Zero form is so cool, and I wanted to see him in action again after only appearing in one mainline game before. Also, imagine how cool the water effects would have been in the Hedgehog engine too. Shadow doesn't get a boss fight either, but he at least gets his own DLC where he's playable and bullies Infinite. Infinite's boss fight with Modern Sonic is pretty good though, and I honestly really like the final boss with the Death Egg robot. The Avatar and Modern Sonic have great phases in that fight, even if it is dumb that Super Sonic isn't needed to fight a threat as big as a Phantom Ruby. Overall though, the gameplay in Sonic Forces is painfully mediocre with some glimpses of being good fun. If there's one thing that absolutely isn't mediocre, however, it's this game's awesome soundtrack. Aside from the awful cheap imitation of Genesis music that classic Sonic has, Modern Sonic and the Avatar have awesome level themes, with Sonic's themes featuring a mix between pop and rock, and the Avatar featuring J-pop tracks with vocals, which is always cool to have in level themes. We also can't forget Infinite's extremely awesome and edgy vocal track that unfortunately doesn't get to play much in the actual game. And as for the main theme of Sonic Forces, Fist Bump, it's a banger and gets way too much hate. The soundtrack in Sonic Forces has a very anime feel to it, and I love that about it. And that about covers most of Sonic Forces, and to answer the previous question, is Sonic Forces the worst? No, I don't really think so. Sonic Forces is ultimately just a textbook definition of an okay game. Although there are some things I genuinely do really like about this game, it's not enough for me to really consider this game good. I've changed a lot since Sonic Forces came out, because it was one of the first games I followed all the way through its release, and I even got a brand new console just to play the game, as before I just had a 360 and 3DS, and I would play Unleashed, Generations, a DS version of Colors, and Sonic Rush. But this was the first time I got a console in its launch year just to play a new game, that being a Sonic game. And despite Sonic Forces being the game that it was a really cool experience for me, and I'm glad that all these years later I'm now experiencing the same thing, as I got a Switch 2 recently, and I got Sonic X Shadow Generations at launch, and that's my favorite Sonic game ever. So Sonic Forces, you might not have been the greatest game ever, but to me, you served your purpose, and I wouldn't be the Sonic fan I am today if it wasn't for you. So for that, I thank you, and I forgive you, Sonic Forces. Oh, by the way, if I have trouble speaking, it's because I got punched in the face over a Chow necklace.